Kind of a Mr. Rogers moment. Hello everybody. Happy Thursday. This is going to be my live streaming day. And I'm simul streaming on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. And I'm doing this on the Uncomplication YouTube channel, which up till now has been primarily a channel where I post videos about cryptocurrency, Bitcoin, things like that. And welcome to that audience. I'm going to do a couple different things today. First, I'm going to invite you to follow a new YouTube channel, which is more specific for this type of content. This is going to be a live art stream. So I've been doing those on Instagram and other places. And if you are part of that crypto crew and want to follow along with this creative process as well, I invite you to go to RSArt on YouTube and follow that channel. I'll be doing these Thursday streams there. I'll still be doing crypto videos now and then on Uncomplication, but fair warning. The second thing that I want to share is I'm a little nervous today to sit down and make some new art, some new paintings, and kind of go through the process and just getting into that creative flow. I like to do these because it forces me into this place of discomfort, which sometimes art and creating and saying anything at all is highly uncomfortable. And it's a lot easier to just say nothing, do nothing, be nothing. And this exercise of getting in front of the camera and even making art live, it feels like a tightrope walk. And it's especially intense for me today because I haven't been painting as much. Over the holidays, I did a couple commissions and some paintings of that type, but I haven't really done the flow state, just kind of free painting in a while. And that is because I've been in this production mode, sending people my art. So I'm looking over here behind the camera. I have this entire shelf of all of these prints that I am sending out to people. I've picked 5 of my favorite prints from the last couple years, or favorite paintings, and I'm offering, you can choose one of these and I'll send it to you for free, or you can choose, this is the 8x10 size and this is half off the normal size. And so you can find these at ryanstoverprints.com. And so this is kind of my plug up front. If you've been following along, you like me, you like my art, go check out ryanstoverprints.com because I am sending everyday envelopes filled with these free and low cost prints. And to me, this is sort of like releasing the first album. So I have spent the last 3 years painting, and this set of paintings kind of represent, to me, a place and time and a story of transition and going from being a full-time tech entrepreneur to being completely lost, completely without a leg to stand on, and finding art and finding creativity and working so hard day in and day out to welcome the person here now sitting in this chair, including all of my weirdness, my insecurities, my shortcomings. And that's what a lot of these paintings hold for me. They were moments of letting go and allowing what is to be. And the process that I'm going to share with you today is specifically how I overcame my self-image and my perfectionism and this intense pain at having failed so miserably in my life. At least that's how it felt. I ran a tech company that I co-founded for 10 years. And while I was doing that, granted, there were very few easy days, but I felt competent. I felt like I knew what I was doing. I felt like I was on the beam, that I had this serendipitous path that was unfolding. And even though things were challenging, I knew I was right where I was supposed to be. And then that whole thing unraveled for a whole host of reasons. And I found myself fired from the company I started. and not just fired, but disrespected. I felt blamed for some of the things that happened that were outside of my control, it felt. And so all of a sudden, I went from just being so competent and so sure that I was going to retire with millions of dollars from the sale of this company. Instead, it was a different story. And very shortly after that, this was early 2021, other parts of my life started to go off the rails as well. And I just felt like I had no confidence. My relationship started falling apart, and I just didn't know who I was anymore. And so it took an entire, years and years of daily doing the hard work of not retreating, but going into the discomfort and finding all of these pieces that were completely unexamined in my life that even though it was chaotic, it was also sort of a privilege to have the time and the space to go this deep and to figure stuff out. And I was in men's groups, screaming obscenities and punching pillows and just getting to the place where I could talk and share. And I did all kinds of things that in the past I wouldn't have even considered because they seemed too woo-woo for me. Things like Reiki, energy work, and a whole bunch of spiritual explorations that have actually shifted things so much. And I see how much my very logical and scientific perspectives that I used to hold were also limiting me from owning the power that I have. So suffice to say, this art is in large part that story, and each one of them is a moment of letting go, and the way that these colors run, and it's a discovery of what's going to happen next. And a lot of these were actually painted live. So this one I painted live at an event that was out in Old Town. This one I painted live here in the studio in front of people. And I'm going to paint some live art today as well. And to create art, especially in front of a live audience, is in a way a forced acceptance of who you are and who I am and the artist that I am. And there's so much that I want from these images, and they almost always fall short. Yet the willingness to just keep going and to keep learning and to keep trying, and even if you look like an absolute fool, even if you do everything wrong and it's total garbage, having that experience and learning and feeling and seeing that it'll be okay is what it's all about. So sometimes it's the failing and not dying that gives us the bravery to try and try again next time. So I'm gonna keep plugging my free prints because it's pretty cool. These are the most beautiful prints I've ever seen, and I'm making them here in the studio. They are 1400 DPI G clay, and so this 5x7 size, I will send you a free print of your choice. Go to ryanstoverprints.com. So because I've been so busy sending out these free prints and getting the production down and the websites running and all of the technical components built, I haven't had a whole lot of time lately to make my art my way. And so what I'm going to do today is I'm going to share with you, whether you're creative or not, or everyone's creative, but whether you're a painter or not is really secondary. This is an exercise that I invite you to do. I think if you are a musician or a writer or a gardener or a baker, or you knit, or you like to take photographs, or whatever it might be, that this exercise will be liberating. I know it was for me. And so I'm going to start kind of sharing this. This was really one of the first things that I discovered that absolutely shifted my creative opening, my willingness to make mistakes, my willingness to not be the perfectionist that gets to 20% and then is afraid to go further, and so just puts it away. And so you can watch me do this. You can do this at the same time. But this is a little exercise that I found on YouTube, of all places, of course. And it is called automatic drawing. And the cool thing about it is a way to lower the defenses of your conscious brain and access that subconscious that is flowing with creativity. And so by getting out of the way, of getting out of the analytical part, there's an opening and a flow and an expression that can be accessed. And one of the things that I stress, and I stress this with my art students, I teach high school art, that there's the desire to have something beautiful to show to the person next to you and be like, wow, look how great this is. That's not what this exercise is about. These can end up looking really beautiful, but that's completely secondary to the point of just showing up and making it. And so all you need is a piece of paper, any kind of paper, and any kind of writing or drawing instrument. And I'm looking around my space here because sometimes I actually like to lean into something that I wouldn't normally draw with. So I had a pencil, now I'm grabbing a Sharpie. And the idea is for the next, let's just say 5 minutes, and I actually have the perfect little timer for this. This has been this cool little timer that I got off of Amazon. I do Pomodoros when I'm doing work and design. I can set it for 25 minutes and I can do a dedicated work sprint, and then I flip it over to 5 minutes and I take a break. But I'm just gonna set this little sucker for 5 minutes, and before I let it go here, I'm just going to zone out. Music is great, put on some music, or just let the brain wander. And the only real rule, I guess, is to keep the pen or pencil moving. And don't worry about if it looks good. Don't worry about what you're drawing. It could be X's and O's. It could be lines. It could be shading in spaces. It's more about just letting that free flow happen without judging it, without resisting it, without trying to shape it into any one thing. And one of the other little tips that I keep in mind is if I find myself getting bored, I'm doing the same pattern over and over, I'm filling the entire page with X's and O's or whatever, I'll notice, I'll be aware of when I'm getting in a rut, and I'll just try something new. So here we go. I'm going to switch over to my overhead camera, and I'm going to set my little thing for 5 minutes. And this is automatic drawing, so I'm just letting the pen be a pen, and I'm getting curious. I'm noticing I'm going kind of fast, but I can notice that too. This whole thing is sort of a welcoming experience, welcoming what's happening. So yeah, I'll just keep my flow of consciousness going. I'm kind of just getting into these little shapes. And I'm really going to start zoning out here, because if I'm thinking too much, it can start to get too intentional. And we're not really looking for intentions. The only intention that I have right now is that I am going to draw. And I notice that my mind immediately wants to start saying like, oh, this is a landscape. These are plants. This is maybe water. And I can find myself starting to kind of go into that idea for a little bit. But then, you know what? Flip it upside down, and now it's something completely different. No sacred cows here. If there's something that I really liked from earlier, I'll just let it get lined over. I'll do some swirls maybe. And I'm noticing that this pen seems to be running out of ink. So now I'm curious, like, can I shade with it? Can I make other marks with it? What can this pen do? Is it just lines? Can I make dots? And so in a way, it's like restoring your consciousness back to how you might have been as a child, where, you know, you're not drawing a dog and a puppy in a sky. You're just like, for the first time, feeling what your arm feels like to be moved with something gripped in your hand. And, you know, I'll change my grip up. Instead of trying to hold it like I'm writing a letter to grandmama, you know, hold it stupid. Hold it like you've never held a pencil before. Hold it in just a completely silly, scribbly kind of way. And then what I find is, you know, even though these are scribbles, there's this part of me that I'm not even consciously aware of that just knows what it likes. That just has kind of what Robert Pirsig, who wrote The Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance, would call an eye for quality. And so I can start to kind of say, or not even say, but I can just kind of notice, like, there's a composition here. There's light and there's dark. And while it might seem like this is random, there's actually a part of me under the surface that I can start to trust, even if I don't know where it's going. You know, my goal is not to like draw a lion or, you know, draw anything in particular. It's just to let what happens happen. But, you know, this isn't just one giant black blob in the middle of the paper, and it would be fine if it was, but like, I'm starting to see inside my own consciousness there's curiosity, and then there's this whole plethora of shapes and forms that, you know, regardless of how I hold the pen or what I do, there's something happening. And I do encourage you to try this, because it's one thing for me to sit here and do it and kind of try and explain what it's like. It's another thing for you to just kind of get lost and fill a page up with Sharpie. And of course, the fumes from the Sharpie just make you travel time, and that's fun too. Don't sniff Sharpie. Okay. But what this exercise did when I first uncovered it or discovered it on YouTube was it gave me a way to just directly be creative without any judgment at all. You know, and again, no sacred cows, no requirement that I show this to anyone. I mean, I'm showing it to you, but, you know, this is not something that I'm probably going to hang on a wall, or, you know, there's other things that I could do maybe to make art out of it. But this is like, it's like singing in the shower, you know? It's just there for a moment of reverberation. My little thing is going to start buzzing here. But there we go. So that's kind of my first little demonstration. And it was a huge unblocker for me, because again, like, my art up until recently, like this story that I'm telling, you know, I had very definite feelings about what my art meant, what it said. I mean, I compared myself to MC Escher and some of these giants that I had no business comparing myself to or feeling bad about. And it was like, I'm either learning and honing and refining and getting to these images, or I'm spinning my wheels and I'm failing and I'm getting older and I haven't achieved anything yet. Speaking of MC Escher, I remember, I think I was like, probably not even that old, like 28, maybe turning 30, and I was just like, oh my gosh, like, my life is almost over and I haven't done anything yet. And MC Escher was creating art and having exhibits when he was in his, you know, 20s, and, you know, here I am doing nothing. And then I have a couple MC Escher books, and it was really beautiful to look and see that some of the best art that MC Escher made was in his 50s and 60s. And yeah, so this was all about breaking that idea, that notion of like, I'm Ryan Stover and I am fucking awesome and I'm going to be famous and I'm going to create, you know, businesses that are successful and art that makes people, you know, see another side of things, yada, yada, yada. Nope. Get back to the kindergarten scribbles. And so This is kind of a precursor to the painting we're going to do today, because it's been a little while since I've made quite this type of painting, and you're going to see how it's almost the same thing. It's that excuse to just let yourself be curious and to let what happens happen. And check it in with my stream here. Cool. So I now have a piece of paper taped to a board, and with watercolor it's really nice to tape your paper down or to get a block, and that just keeps it from bubbling. And here's what we're gonna do. I have a whole host of paints over here, some that I've used a lot, some that I haven't used as much. And when I'm doing my bigger paintings now, when I'm doing ones that you know, I'm trying to make beautiful art or something like that, I've done this enough now where, you know, I have my brushes, I have my techniques, I have experience where I can say, this is the painting I want to make, and here's a plan to get to it. This is going to be the opposite of that. This is going to be the same principle of letting it flow and letting it go that we just did with the automatic drawing, but we're going to include paint. And watercolor specifically is so much fun because water is elemental and it has a mind of its own. And there's nothing that I can do as a human to fully control or predict where that is going to go, what it's going to flow, how it's going to mix. I mean, obviously, expert watercolorists have had so much time in the cockpit that they know how to navigate different situations. They know how to trend towards the results that they want. But there's something really liberating I've found in leaning into the unknowing and setting up interesting situations to just see what happens. And so this is all going to be kind of an experiment. And again, for me, the big breakthroughs have been applying this to my life as well, because I can see how my previous artworks, which are beautiful and they are a place in time, they're, you know, planned, they're black and white and very surgical. I can appreciate those for what they were, and I can see why, when I made art from that perspective, it was very similar to when my life went off the rails and it was a complete failure, and the whole painting, I just wanted to burn it or throw it in the trash. My entire life, you know, I just wanted to hide it from view and maybe move on to something else. And so this method of showing up at the canvas is also how I show up in my life more and more often, and it's had a lot of cool results. And one of them is being here now on this camera, because it has taken a lot of practice to get to the point where I'm willing to be experimental and admit that I don't know so much, and to risk judgment. I'm sure there's lots of people tuning in to the Uncomplication YouTube channel that are all excited that altcoins are moving, and, you know, they want to know my predictions on what Bitcoin's going to do and Ethereum, and I can make those predictions, but here I am showing up radically passionate about something that's just for me, and I know that that might disappoint people, and it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. And that's the freedom that can come from making art in this way and living your life this way. That today is 24 hours. Some of them are sunshine, some of them are darkness. And I am going to show up. I am going to be curious. I am going to make a mess. And I will let future Ryan, future people decide if it was good or not. I don't care. In this moment, I'm overflowing with excitement and satisfaction that I'm here at all, and I have the opportunity to put paint on paper and see what it does. So with that preamble, I'm going to go back to my overhead cam, and I think I can actually do a little picture-in-picture thing here. Yeah. Okay, so I have here my paper. I've got 2 glasses of water, and I like to have 2 because I'll do a first rinse, and this will get really dark, and then I'll do a second rinse, and that'll be more clean water. And then, I just kind of grabbed what I had around. This is a set of paints that I actually hand mixed in a workshop with some of the homies here at Petrichor Collective Studios. So all of these are natural pigments that we mixed together with some binders and made this cute little set of travel watercolors. I'm probably going to lean into these because they're here and they're fun, and we'll see what happens. I've also got just some other kind of liquid watercolors that have been squirted into these troughs. But again, like I'm showing up here. I don't have everything that I would normally have for a full painting. Yeah, so I'm just welcoming what's available, what's here, and here we go. So I'm going to, in a similar way to that automatic painting or automatic drawing, I'm going to just let water touch the paper, and I'm going to build up a first very light background layer. And what that does for me is it's sort of like if you've used like an AI image generator, you'll notice that it goes from this diffuse, blurred out nothing into more and more layers of clarity. And I've just found that that's kind of a useful approach for painting as well, is to just start light, start loose, let it get all blurry, and something will happen. There will be form that takes place. I don't know what it will be yet. We'll see what ends up on the page, but then that can dry, and then the next layer can be a little bit more playing with whatever happened the first time. So no plan here whatsoever. I'm actually just going to pick up like the dried caked paint that is already in this trough, and it's just kind of mixing into like a grayish bluish, and I'm going to make it pretty wet and pretty light, and I'm just going to start putting some paint on this piece of paper. And in the same way that I was trying to break my conscious habit of saying, all right, this is a sky, I'm going to rotate it. I'm going to just keep my conscious mind out of it. I'm going to keep it guessing. So I'm just going to let these grays kind of fill in. I'm picking up other just weird colors here that are, in the palette on the page. And I'm just going to do this sort of background layer. Here's some warmer colors. We'll just kind of see what happens if we let those get in there. Keeping it really light, really loose. And like a kindergartner, and it was kind of adorable. On one of the live streams I did towards the end of the year, I was doing painting in this style, and I had the comments open on YouTube, and someone came in and just like, left this big aggro poop in the comments. I was just like, my autistic son could have done that. And I think they meant it as an insult, but it was so funny to me because I was like, that is such a compliment. Because that's exactly the type of space that I hope to be accessing here. And I think he even said like my 5-year-old autistic son. So it's like, yeah, like that childhood abandoned. And yeah, like autism, like having a brain that's even wired differently, like giving ourselves permission to let our brains be whatever they are, whether it's weird, neurodivergent, or crazy spastic ADD, or like whatever is going to come out. Like, I don't know. That was just kind of a funny moment for me because that's exactly where I'm trying to get, is past that judgment. And I don't know if you can see this so well through the camera. Maybe I can hold this up a little closer, but already, like just with that first little pass, that was so so carefree, so, kind of unintentional. The the way that these colors have started to blend and are coming together are already so beautiful. And I think the beauty is in the fact that they were just allowed to be what they are without me trying to impose too quickly any kind of intention on them. So, if here's another analogy that I think is kind of apt. I play guitar, and I've been playing for a long time, and I have noticed that when I started guitar, I just started playing other people's songs. I'm going to switch back over to this camera. I started playing other people's songs. I started looking up Pearl Jam tabs and different kind of 90s punk and grunge music. And as a learning guitarist, I knew really quickly that I sucked. Because, I'm listening to these songs, I want to play them, I find the tabs, and I'm trying to like get the timing and the rhythm and the finger positions, and I don't know the chords, and it's like, okay, try and play someone else's music as a starting guitarist, and like, yeah, you suck. Like, you suck. You don't sound like it. There's another way to learn guitar. This is the way that I advocate when I talk to friends that are like, yeah, I just bought a guitar at the pawn shop. I say, great, here's my advice. Tune it to an open tuning and just play with it like a toy. Don't try and learn Bob Dylan. Don't try and learn something, Stairway to Heaven. Just tune it into an open tuning. An open tuning is where all of the strings, without any fingers on the fretboard, you just strum it, and it's like a G chord or a D chord. You just strum that, and oh my gosh, you're a musician. Any kind of little playment or playing in that configuration, in that tuning, is going to sound good. And then you can start experimenting. You can put your finger here, play that, see if it sounds good. And before long, even people with zero experience playing any kind of instrument can sound really good on an open-tuned guitar. And this is very similar to that. So if I said, you know what, I'm going to be a watercolorist, I am going to paint the, Sistine Chapel, or I don't know, I'm going to paint a landscape of some historic building, or I'm going to paint a portrait, or I'm going to paint a horse jumping through a flaming hoop. I don't know. Again, like, it's really clear to know if you suck because it either looks like a horse on a skateboard or it doesn't. But again, the whole point of this exercise, and it's just an exercise, is to get to the point where the paint on the paper is enough. And that's art. And my flow here, my getting into the zone, is just allowing it to do what it does and not judging it, and then being experimental and playful. This is just like playing a guitar in an open tuning. So, like I said, I did this first really light wash, and I've kind of been talking because I'm letting it dry. I am going to go back in here, and what this first pass did for me is there's just this little area that has some warmer colors, and I'm kind of gravitating towards that as some place that I'm going to maybe develop some more warm colors and let them go out into the cool colors. And I'm going to really stick with what I've been saying and just let the mistakes happen, let the discovery happen. Try not to force this into being any particular thing, and let's just see what happens. So, I'm gonna just start by mixing up some warmer colors here, and I'm gonna let them be kind of blendy and whatever these want to be. We'll just kind of mix something until we think it looks interesting. There we go. I kind of like when it's sort of like different colors and sort of muddy. I'll pick up something over here. It's really secondary that it be perfect. That's not the goal at all. So I'm just going to kind of come in here, and I'm going to let this little area be warm. And if you're here in the beginning and you watched my automatic drawing demonstration, you might see that it's kind of similar. Like I'm not really thinking of what I want this to end up as. I'm just letting the brush be a brush. And that's enough. That little bit was enough. And now I'm going to go back into some of these kind of cooler colors and just kind of bring them together here. And what's fun is, here's like the experiment. So I've got this little wet drippy part here, and when they touch, they run and they bleed, and we get all kinds of weird, unexpected blooms. And I'm actually going to let this run back this way, this paint little section, because I want to do some more of that, just blending and bleeding. And if you've noticed, my first layer was light, and this layer is just a little bit darker. And I don't know what it is, and it doesn't really matter yet. And I'm just gonna, yeah, keep adding some pigment here and just see what happens. Now, I will say that there's this concept of beginner's mind. You might have come across it. It's a Zen concept that there's actually something really special and really beautiful about the beginner's mind, that it would be wonderful if we could always keep our beginner's mind in things. And I noticed that even as I do this painting, which, you know, is what it is, there's still, you know, there's still knowledge that is coming out that is not purely like I'm trying to describe, like my early steps, my early experiments with this type of painting. You know, every stroke was a complete new learning, and that was very much the beginner's mind of just complete unknowing. Like what does watercolor look like? You know, what happens if it's really wet? What happens if it's really dry? What happens if a wet spot touches a dry spot? You know, some of those early paintings for me were all about discovering that. And I noticed that even in this, even though I'm talking about this like real free letting it go, there's also a little bit of restraint, or, you know, knowledge that is almost to my detriment at this point. I think if you're at home or, you know, you try this yourself, you're actually going to find out that there's even more value as a beginning painter, or, you know, having not really tried this before, than I can even achieve now, having done lots of paintings. So embrace that beginner's mind. Embrace that magic time where you really don't know, and you aren't getting in your own way, and you aren't preoccupied with outcomes. Like even now, I can see in myself, and I can welcome it, just let it be. You know, but I have a desire to make this be pretty, because here I am on live streams and you're watching me, and like, you know, if it's ugly, are you going to think, oh, like, why am I watching this fool? I'll go watch all those other people who are far more talented. But I can sit with those thoughts, those feelings, just be aware of them while I mix up more paint. And I'm going to lean into this really bright red because it's just sort of calling me. And we'll see what happens. I'm going to kind of come into this area now. I actually want even more pigment, I think. Just kind of let this be wet and runny and messy. Get even more ink and pigment. And in the same way that I was doing, you know, just going back and forth between the lights and the darks, the warms and the cools, I'll kind of do the same thing here with some cool colors. And so with every painting, there is this moment where, you know, it's called the ugly phase of a painting. And it's sort of like that interface between where you've been and where you're going, and there could be an intense amount of judgment that like this is succeeding or not succeeding. But just sticking with that too. And knowing that there's a lot more time here. There's a lot more opportunities to let what is be, and then come in with that next artist and that kind of continual game of add-on with oneself to just trust that wherever we're at is exactly where we're supposed to be. And the thinly veiled parallels with life are present, because there's some days that I come in this studio and I am just so unclear on what it is I'm supposed to be doing or what's next, and I want to know for certain that I'm doing the right thing or that it's all going to work out, and I rarely get that. I rarely get that assurance. Yet there's this kind of trust that can be developed that like that stroke was the right stroke, and the way these things are running together, it's just what happens, and this whole thing becomes kind of this record of me in this moment doing something, and later on those will be the same little strokes and places that I'll interact with again later that will be such gifts to the overall painting. And you'll see that happen here in just a moment, because this all is going to happen pretty quick. I'm going to kind of let that flow together. So yeah, at this stage of the painting, I'm recognizing that these are all kind of base layers, and they don't have to be perfect. It's actually even better when they're varied and weird. And see if I can zoom in here a little bit. I don't think you're really getting the full experience that I get to have with the wet liquid paint, but the way that these interact and mix, and the fact that it's kind of alive right now. Like this piece of paint is so wet. Like I could let it run, I could let it drip, I could add something here and have this whole part drip down. There's a lot of power, I guess, in that living edge, that living moment. And sometimes the artful restraint is just letting it be. So with watercolor, there is a time component, because if I go in with my next steps, this will be so wet that it will it just won't be ready yet. So a lot of the time I'll have multiple paintings going at once, and that allows me to just like continue creating without having to wait because I can get kind of impatient. But with this, I'm gonna let it dry, I'm gonna do the right thing, because I know that the next steps are gonna be awesome. I can already tell, just as messy as this looks right now, it is going to end up beautiful, and you're gonna see that happen in real time here in a moment. So I'm gonna jump back over to my face cam, and yeah, I know actually what I'm going to do. I'm going to check in with some comments. I have this whole setup here where I've got my art desk, I've got 2 cameras, and then over here at the computer, I can actually go to my computer desk, and I believe, yeah, my mic over here is now working. So I'm going to see if I have any comments. See if I can do that. I don't think the Instagram stream worked, but that's okay. And I don't know if my comments work. This is all an experiment in process, so let's see if I am indeed streaming on Facebook. Yeah. Cool. All right, well, I'm just kind of playing with the tools available to me here. And I thought that I had like a little YouTube comment window, but I don't see it. New tools. All right, that's fine. We do something and then we learn from it and we do something next. So I'm going to go back to my art desk. Just let this be what it is. And yeah, it's not fully dry, but I think that's okay because we've got a limited amount of time. And I want to also just stress what I've been alluding at here, which is that perfection is not the end result. I have some confidence now that I'm going to be able to make this into a pretty beautiful little piece of art. But if you were jumping in and you're trying some of these exercises, especially like the automatic drawing, I'm kind of playing that balance between like teaching this method that's about not having perfection or having a beautiful outcome and just welcoming whatever is, and my desire to make something that is beautiful and something that is desirable that someone will want to buy and hang on their wall. So that's kind of the fun double edge that I get to walk. And if you don't, that's kind of a gift as well. Okay, so I have this high flow acrylic black. I'm going to put a few drops here. And this is still probably wet, but I'm going to now go in with my little brush. And this is the other part of this drawing and painting method that I really like, is that I can let my right brain, that creative, expressive, flowy brain, I can just let it loose with all of these painty, drippy, colorful lines. And then once that is done, I can let my left brain, which is analytical and wants to see form and structure, I can let it loose and just have its moment of what's here, what do I want to call out, what, which of these little curly cues do I want to accentuate? And it's kind of cool because it is wet, so I am getting some runny, drippy happenings here. And as hard as it is, I'm trying to tap back into that kind of preformed conscious brain that I was accessing while I was doing the automatic drawing. So I'm just letting the brush wander. I'm letting myself be curious. I've done so many of these now that it's hard not to fall into the same patterns, and that's why I'm actually kind of excited to be working on some completely different styles of art to get away from playing the same songs over and over. This method that I'm painting with right now, which is very risk-free, like I don't worry that this is going to turn out good or bad. I just know if I keep going, it's going to be interesting. There's going to be form, there's going to be color, and the black and white kind of look of the ink makes for an interesting drawing that is a moment in time where I sat down and I let this painting emerge. And yeah, so this to me is just sort of like this sprawling, organic growth. And I can be really controlled with the detail, and I can be, kind of more willing to make big strokes and just let everything else be in relation to those big strokes. So I'll just kind of play with a combination of the two. And I still have some wet paint down here, so it'll be interesting to see how this all shapes up. But at the end of the day, my goal, if any, is not to make any specific image. I mean, I like when they turn out beautiful and interesting, but this for me is already successful because I showed up, I did something, and showing up and doing something compounded over time is what builds relationships, it's what builds businesses and art pieces and lives that are worth living. And so this kind of acceptance that there's a million things that I could be doing right now, and there might even be some very strong opinions about the value of those things versus other things. Like maybe it would have been a lot more valuable for me today to work on the marketing campaign for my free prints offer. Like I know that is going to be the biggest generator of revenue. There's also that voice that's like aware that when I was doing a lot of crypto stuff. Oh, I didn't realize that I wasn't in frame here. Look at that. There's a lot of money that can be made. And I even had someone in the comments the other day that was like quasi calling me out because I said something about being an idealist, and I just recognized this in myself. Like there's a shadow side to it too, but I think in general, I really have a deep trust in the universe and in what happens because it comes from a source and a force that is so beyond what my human brain can comprehend that at a certain point there's really only one fork in the road, and that's to either trust it or to resist it. And I found that when I resist it, it's frustrating and it's painful and it's annoying and it's full of anger and fear and blame. And then if I trust it, all kinds of serendipitous unfoldings seem to happen. And so I had made this comment that I was kind of an idealist and that I believe in the goodness of people. I believe that we are patterns inside of patterns and that history repeating itself is in some way an organic process that is generative, that is okay. And I know this because there's so many horrible, horrible things that have happened in human history, from wars and atrocities to, little crimes against people, and I mean everything. Every death, every rape, every murder, every cheat and lie and horrible thing that has happened in the human story, in a way, was required for any of us to be here at all. And it's really enticing to get in and start slicing things up. I mean, this is what I spent a whole period doing in my own life. Like, where did I go wrong? What was the moment that I could have done something different that would have changed all of this? And that, can be done personally. It can be done historically. We can look for those moments when history seemed to pivot. And gosh, what if that didn't happen that way? And we can play that game and say, oh, see, this is why humans suck, is that Eve ate the apple. The conquistadores murdered and took over the whole South American continent, or Hitler rose to power, and X, Y, and Z. Like, we can play that revisionist history. We can also do that in our lives. And so my idealism, if that's even what it is, I don't know if that's the right term for it. It's more just this recognition that, yeah, that's a game that we can play. We can sit and we can look at our lives and say, gosh, I coulda, woulda, shoulda. But that negates that opening for the unexpected and the absolute improbability that exists everywhere all the time anyway. Another way to say it is, if you have a single thing in your life now or in the past or in the future, if you have any part of your life that seems worthwhile and joyful, the good stuff, what we want to create more of, if you've had even a moment of that in your life, that rests on that whole pile of all of the shit that we deem as bad, the stuff that shouldn't have happened. And so that to me is this kind of idealism where, I can't make that judgment call. There's this Zen story where that really kind of illuminates this whole concept. And it goes like this. There's a farmer, and he has horses. And one night, his son forgets to close the gate, and all the horses get out. And so this poor farmer now, he's lost all his horses. And the neighbors come around, and they say, oh, that's such a tragedy. Stupid son, that's too bad. And the farmer says, maybe. And the next day, the horses come back, and they've each brought with them a wild horse, and they all go into the pen, and the guy closes the gate. Now he's got twice as many horses as he had before. And all of his friends and villagers come around, and they say, oh, wow, like, what a fortunate turn of events. Like, this is a great thing. And the farmer says, maybe. And the next day, his son is out, breaking and riding one of the new horses, and it throws him off, and he breaks his arm, and now this farmer's son can't work in the field, and he's down a man. And again, the villagers all come around, and they say, oh, what a tragedy, your poor son. And the guy says, maybe. And then the next day, the army conscription officers come around to press young men into the military. And they take one look at the farmer's son with his broken arm, and they say, nope, not fit for service, and they pass him over. And so the farmer gets to keep his son. He doesn't go off to die in a war. And everyone comes around and says, what a great thing this was. And the farmer says, maybe. So I guess, that's the kind of idealism that is really at the heart of my art and my life at this point, is the suspension of the moment, the suspension of the judgment of the moment, put it that way. While I sit here with this painting, there's all kinds of moments where I feel like it's less than what I want it to be. This could have been anything, and I ended up with this, and it's so ugly, and maybe. And similarly with just life happening, I'll give you another example that's kind of like the military conscription officers. Is I got a letter in the mail from the IRS, and of course, as soon as I saw it, my blood went cold, because no one likes getting letters from the IRS. And it was at the end of a day where things were just going so well. I had just sent off a whole bunch of prints in the mail to people that had bought them, and I, just things were working, and I was feeling great. And I came home and I got this letter from the IRS, and I was just like, frig. And it had some form that I didn't report correctly. And, I just kind of had this moment of resistance and almost this temptation to be like, see, as soon as something goes right, something's got to come and just knock me down a peg and blah, blah, blah. Like, it's always something, and this friggin' system, blah, blah, blah. Anyway, I kind of sat with it, and I I set my Pomodoro timer the next day, my little 25-minute timer, and said, you know what, I'm just going to get this done in 25 minutes. And I logged into TurboTax, and I figured out how to do an amended tax return, and I had to do all this research for what this thing was in the first place, and it turned out to be stock from the sale of my company, the one that I said in the beginning that I was fired from. Was this whole ordeal. I thought I was going to end up owing a bunch more money because that's just kind of what I expect, and it turned out that I am actually owed money because, I mean, this is kind of the good bad side, but the stock was actually worth significantly less when it was sold than when I bought it. And so this whole thing that like kind of ruined my day for a moment, this letter from the IRS, ended up being kind of a little boon, and I just dealt with it and I got it done, and that's that farmer in the maybe. So I don't even quite remember why I got on this little tangent, other than how did I get on this tangent? I know I was talking about the commenter on YouTube. That's what it was. Okay, so here's the point. The comment that I had made was that I was so grateful for what has unfolded in my life, and that this is kind of the thread. When I'm doing these paintings, there's things that happened, at this point now, like half an hour ago, that I've already forgotten about, that are just kind of in the background. All of these previous versions of myself that were here making this painting. I'm now here to kind of discover those moments and play with them, and I'm really grateful right now that I have all of this to work with, that I have all these little interesting things that my brush is now finding and highlighting and turning into this little composition. And earlier, some of these strokes I might have really not liked, and now they are the gift to me here in this present moment. And I made this comment where I said, I'm kind of an idealist in this way, that I believe that the things that are coming to us now are the gifts that required all of the shit in the first place. All the people who have died. I mean, think about how many people died in World War II and all the conflicts of the 20th century. And if they hadn't, I wouldn't be here. I wouldn't be here making this art. I wouldn't be here making these words. And so, at a very real level, someone else's absolute tragedy, which I can have respect for, I can have empathy for, but their greatest tragedy is the gift of my existing at all. And with that kind of a mindset, how can we blame someone? Maybe that one who does something against you is actually just this current of history, of nature, that is bringing us to that next moment. And when we're out of judgment, when we're just in it, and we're just picking up that last paint line and continuing it and making it something new, it can be received with gratitude. So I keep dancing around and around. I said that I was so grateful that I was exactly where I was in this studio making art, and there's a lot of quote unquote mistakes that I made along the way to get here, and especially monetary mistakes. Like so many places where just out of my own I don't even quite know, like my contrarianism or my pain even, I said no to easy money, as it were. And especially like in the crypto space, like there's lots of opportunities that I had to just like capitalize on things, and it just felt so against who I was or who I was becoming or whatever that story was. And so this person in the comments said, like, that's bullshit. Like, of course you would rather have a fat bank account right now, and then you can go and make whatever art you want. Like, don't give us that crap that you're like so happy that you didn't do things the right way or have the payout or whatever. And I really if I have resistance, it's against that kind of thinking. And maybe it's just because I've spent so much time torturing myself with that kind of thinking that, if I had only monetized my knowledge of crypto more effectively, like I'd be sitting with a bank account with hundreds of thousands of dollars in it, and I could just have some cool studio up in the woods, and I wouldn't be like having to hustle as hard as I am and yada yada yada. But without exactly the story that we're living, we kind of, I don't know. Well, first of all, that other history doesn't exist except in our minds, and it just becomes like a source of torture. Lessons perhaps, but also if there's judgment there, it could be a source of shame. It could be a source of evidence of personal failing and kind of used as a proof. Like, yep, see, I'm an idiot. I do dumb things. I can't be trusted. I can't trust myself now. And that, I don't know, that is not worth the time. Those other histories don't exist. So you are right where you are. And whatever has come from your brush, has come from your life, was nothing more than expression of who you are or who you were at that moment. And so like the automatic drawing, like the kind of exploratory painting, being able to embrace what is happening, the artist that you are today, the speaker that you are today, the lover that you are today, the crypto trader that you are today, the spouse that you are today, the parent that you are today, just letting it flow from whatever source it comes from, and trusting it enough to just show up and do the thing is exactly what gets us to the next moment. And this is something that has just kind of revealed itself to me through lots and lots and lots of learning, is that when I do that, I consistently find myself, not all the time, but periodically, almost like punctuation, at these moments where I'm just so overjoyed and full and connected and happy, and it could take weeks or months to get there, but when I land there, I see, oh my gosh, all of these little pieces had to be there for this composition to arrive. I had to suffer in order to open myself up to experience more pleasure. And yeah, I like sharing that, because that, if there's like a meaning behind my art, I don't know that there's really a meaning. Like these things just become these interesting little moments that are kind of captured. And this painting is in a way holding all of these words that I'm thinking, and all the thoughts that all the words that I'm saying and thoughts that I'm thinking. They're somehow contained in it, but they're not overt. I'm not trying to put into the art the message. I'm letting the faith make art. And however it's judged later doesn't concern me as much as it used to. Someone might look at this painting later and just be like, oh, okay, my like that guy said in the comments, my autistic 5-year-old could have done that. And that's what they see. And someone else might see it and just really get lost in it, and really get lost in like, what was this moment? What, with this stroke, what made the stroke go that way? Why did you choose? Why all these little brush strokes, all these little choices or moments? There's this kind of curiosity that can creep in as a viewer. And I even get this when I look back at my old work, like, what was I doing to make that stroke? Like, I have no idea. I don't have access to it now. And that's kind of the fun of it. And it's a lot like, our days and weeks, they all blur together in a way, but we're here because of these invisible moments, these invisible choices, these invisible meetings and happenings that go beyond what our brains can hold. And so they just become like this serendipitous backdrop. And it's just sort of like the vapor of life. You know, everything is this sort of dream state, these dream characters doing dream things. And I can either try and go be a big badass amidst it and really boss it around and take control and have the outcomes that I want, or I can welcome every moment with gratitude and see what's mine to do in that moment, and know that another moment is coming, and know that I won't even remember the contents of this moment. I won't remember what I said in this video in, a couple hours even. And yet the art will remain, our lives will remain. And so that is fun. That is cool. That is the feeling that I get when I go to an art museum and I look at all of these strokes by masters and normal folks alike and just see this record of motion, of hands moving, holding brushes, of heartbreaks and desires. And I think this one's getting pretty close to just being what it is. Kind of zoom out here. Compositionally, I sort of want something over here, and quite often I'll kind of cop out a little bit and I'll just do like a gold sun, and that just sort of makes it like something in a space with a sun. And I think I'll just do that for the sake of doing it. Let's see here. Kind of lean into this yellow that I made from these natural pigments. So we'll just get some real thick kind of burnt sienna and yellow. And I'll just kind of put a little something. Maybe even just a few more little tie-ins of that color. And there she be. And here we are. And at this point, I have no idea if my live stream even streamed. I have no idea if anyone listened. I came here and I sat and I spoke. And there's the potential that maybe none of this recorded, none of it was heard, it all just went into the ether, and that's okay too. I feel like the things that make us who we are not at the conscious level. And it's even beyond the subconscious level. It's at the cellular level. And the little phrases we hear and the people we meet and the glances we get and the smells that we pick up on, the experiences that we have, large and small, all go into this being that we are. And so no matter what the outcome is of this live stream today, I'll learn that later. I'll go see if my thing was recording or streaming or any of that. It might all have been lost, but it wasn't, because my next moment will be on top of this moment, and it's all this towering stack of unfathomable improbability. And that to me is so beautiful, so awe-inspiring, and all I can do is regard it with the utmost gratitude and faith that it is what it is. And my faith is not in it being created by some specific being for some specific purpose, that I have faith with that purpose or cause. It's that deep knowing of my unknowing, and the feeling in my bones, in my heart, that I can choose to resist it, or I can go with it. and either way I'll be going with it. So might as well go with it. Yeah, so that was fun. That was that. I will one more time plug my my prints that you can go get a free print of your choice from these 5 that I have selected from kind of my first album. You know, this is the last 3 years worth of paintings. A lot of them were done live. They're all these exercises in welcoming. And you can go to ryanstoverprints.com and choose which of these bad boys you like the most, and I'll send it to you. This 5x7 size is the one that's for free. You just pay postage and packaging. But yeah, these were all created through a similar process to the one that we did today, and under different situations, different conditions, and probably with a lot less talking. But that is what today was all about. So yeah, go check out my art, ryanstoverprints.com. Feel free to follow Ryan Stover Art on Facebook. That's where I'm going to be doing more of the live streams. And Ryan Stover Art on YouTube. If you enjoy this, go follow that channel. I'm probably going to do less of these on the Uncomplication channel, the purely art and philosophy ones. And I'll kind of let that be more about finance and building that personal dream, that financial security, that financial freedom. I'm in a couple programs that I have learned so much in the direction of financial freedom, and I'm excited to share some of that with you guys and gals. So that will be more the content of the Uncomplication channel. Yeah, look at that. It's time to go. All right, love you all, and until next time, cheers. Yeah, okay, let's see. Ooh, I've got my little